Hello! The technique that I want to show you today is double right angle weave, double raw. This is a stitch which exists for an eternity. I just try to give it some systematic, so I'm using this stitch not only in a flat version but also for three-dimensional structures. And here we go. Double right angle weave units consist of two steps. So we have the first step where we string 4 beads, make a round pass back through all the beads so that your thread is stuck. These beads are the core beads of the units. And now we weave a second time in the round and add 1 new bead after each of the 4 core beads. And these beads are called the connective beads. Now the thing is that adjacent units never share the core beads. They always just share the connective beads. That's why I named the connective beads connective beads. Makes kind of sense. So that means when we're done with our first unit, we will exit from said connective bead. Just pick one of them here in this case. You see the 4 core beads in the center, the connective beads in the outline. Now we string 4 new core beads. Every unit always starts with 4 core beads, no exception. We pass back through the connective bead that we were exiting from, and then we weave in the round, and now we have 3 more positions where we can add a connective bead. And this is what we will do. So add a connective bead in the first position, in the second position, and in the last position, there is already a connective bead. And so we just pass back through the connective bead here in this last position. Then after that, pull everything tight so that all the, especially the core beads, are snuggling up and that there's a nice firm unit. We continue in a row, so I will exit from the connective bead in opposite position where I started. And just like with right angle weave, also in double right angle weave, you're alternating between clockwise and counterclockwise units. So this one is a counterclockwise unit. The previous one was a clockwise unit. The important thing is, at the end of the unit, whenever you come back to the starting bead, when you exit from your starting bead, then at the end, that's the moment where you pull the thread tight. Before, everything can be a little bit loose, but really when you come back to your starting bead, always pull the thread tight, and then your beads will snuggle up. They, especially the core beads, if they're next to your starting bead, if they are not getting close enough, just give them a little push, and then they will snuggle up. In the second row, I will show you a little trick, which is actually not working in the first row, but from the second row on, you will see that helps you to snuggle up your beads a little bit easier. Now I added one more unit, one last unit, and we can start with our second row. So the second row, of course, doesn't start from the tip end of the unit, it starts from the side. So I'm just taking a turn to the right here, which is my closest connective bead from where I exited. And here again, I string the 4 core beads. As I said, no exception, every unit starts with the 4 core beads. And also, here I will add the 3 connective beads in the given positions. Now I will proceed going down, so I have to weave through this unit. This is the same like in right angle weave. You just weave forward until you come to the point from where you will continue. And I will exit from the bead here in the bottom position. Now I string my 4 core beads. No exception, as I said. And you already see that there is the adjacent connective bead here coming from the left edge or on the left edge of my unit, and I'm just passing through the connective bead of the previous unit instead of adding a new connective bead. In the second and in the third position, I will add a new connective bead. And now you see I come back, it would be coming back to my starting point. And here I'm not passing through the bead, instead I'm skipping the bead of my starting point. In this way, you skipped every connective bead once. Yeah? So the thread is once going all the way around your core beads. You skipped this position in all 4 positions. So in other words, your beads are snuggling up nicer. This does not work in the first row because you will lose the tension of the thread if you do that in the first row. But from the following rows, your units are getting nicer when you just skip the first bead, the starting bead, when you get that past that position in the second time around. Now, this is a clockwise unit, so here I start with my 2 new connective beads, and in the third position I join it to the connective bead of the previous row. And again here I can skip that starting bead. You don't have to do that. If your beads are snuggling up, everything fine. But if you have trouble snuggling up your beads, then this is a nice way to just have a more neat double right angle weave structure. Now, the point is, while you can see me making the rest of the row, one thing to pay attention to, the core beads are not your right angle weave structure in this piece. The connective beads are the right angle weave structure. If you compare this to a right angle weave grid, you will see that the connective beads are in the same position as the beads in your right angle weave, in your normal right angle weave grid. Means your step with the core beads is kind of the step ahead of your right angle weave structure. Double right angle weave bases are very versatile in their use. Depending on how you use them, they can be rather sturdy when you embellish them on the top. So it's a very stable ground for your beadwork when you like to put embellishments on top and everything. And on the other side, it's still very flexible. It's flexible in all directions, not like peyote, which you can roll up in one direction and the other direction is rather stiff. But double right angle weave is flexible in all directions. That makes this base very versatile. And compared to classic right angle weave, the beads are in a dense grid, so there is no visible thread in between, which I really like, and that's why I prefer a double right angle weave grid to a normal right angle weave grid. Now, how to join 2 adjacent structures with double right angle weave, that's fairly easy. You just start again with your core beads, and you will already assume that you see the connective bead of the other side will join in the second position. So in the first position, you add a new connective bead. Then in the second position, you pass through the connective bead of the other piece. Of the other part. You could also roll up a strip and zip it in this way. So, and in the third position, you add a new bead. And then, of course, you are exiting from the bottom connective bead of this unit. And then you go from there, always joining that new unit left and right to the or right and left in this case, because we're clockwise in the direction. So start with the core beads, then join it to the connective beads left and right. And there's another thing which you can see here about double right angle weave, especially when you learned right angle weave before. In right angle weave, the beads are often not in a clear position because of this going double thread on the one side, single thread on the other side, and so on. If you are not familiar with that stitch, I recommend to see the video that I put here on my channel. So you sometimes when you make the stitch, you don't really see, is this the left bead, right bead, is this did I skip a bead, is there a bead in between or whatever. The grid is not really clearly visible. The double right angle weave gives you a very, very clear grid, as you can see here. So it's hard to to catch the wrong bead, to be honest. You really have to pay no attention if you catch the wrong bead here. So once you added your core beads, you see everything is very obvious where you have to weave along. That makes this stitch, in my eyes, almost easier than the classic right angle weave. And here you don't have to zigzag back because back along the line with the double thread, single thread problem. That's not an issue here because the dense structure does not provide an uneven or a messy look of the grid. So this is the double row grid, and now just to compare it, because there is something that looks a little bit like double row grid, and that's flat chenille stitch. And now let us have a look at the flat chenille stitch and the double row, where there's the difference. And the difference is that in chenille stitch, only, you see from the size, it's the same as both sides, 8 beads, so it's all looking the same. But the beads in the center, they are going in another direction. On the outline in both stitches, you have the single beads or the connective beads in the same position, but in the grid itself, the single beads here of the chenille stitch are all in horizontal direction. On the outline, it's the same, but here all the beads are in horizontal direction. And in the double row grid, the beads are alternating vertical and horizontal direction. So you can go all along the horizontal line here in between the rows, and then you can also go all the way along in the vertical line in between the rows. So this is a total symmetric stitch, and flat chenille isn't. On the other hand, flat chenille is a little bit faster to make. So pick your right technique for the right project. Thank you very much for your attention. Bye-bye.